Part 1. The incident the space station called Harmony's Rest floated in the darkness between stars. It was a massive structure, built by many alien species working together. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds walked through its wide hallways every day. They came to trade, to talk, and to make deals. The station was neutral ground where enemies became business partners and strangers became friends. On this particular day, a small human ship had docked at the station. Ambassador Park Yuna stepped off the ship with her daughter holding her hand. Little Park Somi was only 7 years old, with bright eyes and a smile that could warm any heart. She looked around at the strange aliens with wonder, not fear. Everything was new and exciting to her. Yuna had brought her daughter because the mission was supposed to be simple and safe. She was here to sign a basic trade agreement. Nothing dangerous. Nothing complicated. The meetings would take only a few hours, and she wanted Somi to see the galaxy beyond Earth. She wanted her daughter to grow up knowing that humans were part of something bigger. The station was crowded that day. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others crawled on many legs or floated through the air. Somi pointed at each new creature with excitement, asking her mother endless questions. Near the central plaza, a group of Calverian soldiers stood guard around their delegation. The Calverians were tall insect-like beings with hard shells covering their bodies. They had 4 arms and walked on 2 powerful legs. Their eyes were cold and black, showing no emotion. They were known throughout the galaxy as warriors and conquerors. Other species feared them and gave them whatever they wanted. Commander Thilla led the Calverian group. She was larger than the others, her shell darker and covered with marks that showed her many victories in battle. She had killed hundreds of enemies with her own claws. She believed that strength was everything, and that weak species existed only to serve the strong. Humans, to her, were nothing but soft, fragile creatures barely worth noticing. Yuna needed to speak with a trade official on the other side of the plaza. She knelt down and looked into her daughter's eyes. "Somi, stay right here," she said gently. "Mommy needs to talk to someone for just a minute. Don't wander off, okay?" Somi nodded seriously. "I'll stay here, Mommy." Yuna smiled and walked toward the official, keeping her daughter in sight. The conversation would only take a moment. She could see Somi from where she stood, but Somi was 7 years old, and 7-year-olds are curious. A small flying creature with glowing wings caught her attention. It danced through the air, leaving trails of soft light behind it. Somi laughed and took a step toward it, then another. She didn't realize she was moving closer to the Calverian group. The flying creature landed on a railing, near Commander Thilla. Somi reached for it, her small fingers stretching out. She didn't see the Calverian commander behind her. She didn't know she had stepped on the edge of Thilla's ceremonial cloak. Thilla felt the tug on her cloak and spun around. She saw a tiny human child standing on the sacred fabric that represented her rank and honor. In Calverian culture, touching a commander's cloak without permission was a serious insult. Thilla did not care that the child was small. She did not care that it was an accident. She saw only disrespect. "Vermin," Thilla hissed. Her armored arms swung down with terrible speed. The blow caught Somi across the face and chest. The little girl flew through the air like a broken doll. She hit a metal pillar with a sickening crack and crumpled to the floor. She did not move. Blood began to pool around her small body. For a moment, the entire plaza went silent. Hundreds of aliens stood frozen, staring at the tiny human child bleeding on the floor. Then Yuna's scream shattered the silence. "Somi!" Yuna ran faster than she had ever run in her life. She fell to her knees beside her daughter and gathered the broken body in her arms. Somi's arm was bent at a wrong angle. Her face was covered in blood, but she was breathing. She was alive, Help! Yuna screamed. Someone help my daughter! Medical teams rushed forward. Other humans from the delegation pushed through the crowd. They surrounded Yuna and Somi, creating a protective circle. Commander Thilla watched the chaos with disgust. She looked at the blood on her armored claw and wiped it on her cloak as if cleaning off dirt. When a station security officer approached her, she clicked her mandibles in what passed for a Calvorian laugh. "Control your vermin," Thilla said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Or I will exterminate it." The words hit Yuna like a second blow. She looked up at the monster who had hurt her child, her eyes filled with a mother's rage. But she could not leave Somi. She could not do anything but hold her bleeding daughter and pray. The Galactic Council held an emergency hearing 3 days later. Somi was in a medical center, her arm in a regeneration cast, her face still bruised. The doctor said she would recover, but her arm would never be the same. The bones had been shattered too badly. Yuna stood before the council and demanded justice. She showed them the footage from the station cameras. She showed them her daughter's medical reports. She asked for Commander Thilla to face punishment for attacking a child. The Calverian ambassador spoke next. He called the incident unfortunate, but said that Thilla had acted within her rights. The child had touched sacred ceremonial garments. In Calverian law, this was punishable by death. Thilla had shown mercy by not killing the human. The council members whispered among themselves. The Calvorians were powerful. They had a massive fleet and controlled many systems. Making them angry could start a war. Humans were new to the galaxy. They were weak. They could be ignored. The ruling came quickly. The incident was declared an unfortunate cultural misunderstanding. No charges would be filed. The matter was closed. Thilla stood in the council chamber and laughed. The sound echoed off the walls like breaking glass. She looked directly at Yuna as she laughed, her black eyes empty of any feeling. Yuna said nothing. She turned and walked out of the chamber with her head held high. Behind her, the other human delegates followed in complete silence. None of them spoke. None of them showed any emotion. But across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, billions of humans were watching the live broadcast. They saw the footage of a child being struck down. They heard the council's ruling. They watched an alien monster laugh at human pain. And in that moment, something changed in humanity. Something old and dangerous woke up in their hearts. It was not hot anger that burned fast and died. It was cold fury that would not fade. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had hurt a human child and laughed about it. Now they would learn why Earth was called a death world. Now they would learn what humans do to those who harm their young. Part 2. The silent response. The video spread across Earth like fire in dry grass. Every screen, every device, every news channel showed the same terrible images. A little girl with bright eyes and a warm smile. A monster in armor striking her down. Blood on a cold metal floor. And then the laughter. That horrible mocking laughter. People watched in their homes, in their offices, in their schools. They watched on trains and buses and park benches. Mothers held their children closer. Fathers clenched their fists. Grandparents remembered old wars and old enemies. Everyone watched, and everyone felt the same cold feeling growing in their chest. Admiral Kang Do-hyun sat in his living room with his wife and granddaughter. The little girl was 8 years old, almost the same age as Somi. She watched the news with confusion in her eyes. "Grandfather," she asked quietly, "why did the bug lady hurt that girl?" Do-hyun looked at his granddaughter and felt something twist in his heart. "Because she thought she could," he answered honestly. "But the space police said it was okay." "They're not going to punish her?" "No, little one, they're not." The girl thought about this for a long moment. Then she asked the question that billions of humans were asking at that same moment. What are we going to do about it? Do-yoon did not answer, but his eyes grew hard and his jaw tightened. He had commanded ships and soldiers for 40 years. He had fought pirates and rebels and threats to Earth. He had never started a war. But as he watched Thilla laugh on the screen again, he knew that some things could not be forgiven. Within 24 hours, the first changes began. Military recruitment centers across Earth reported lines stretching around buildings. Young men and women who had never thought about serving suddenly wanted to join. They did not come with anger on their faces. They came with quiet determination. They signed their names and asked when training would begin. Veterans came out of retirement. Soldiers who had hung up their uniforms years ago called their old commanders. Engineers who had left weapons development returned to their laboratories. Scientists stopped working on peaceful projects and started working on things that could kill. The most frightening part was the silence. Humans did not riot. They did not protest. They did not scream or cry or break things. They simply stopped talking and started working. Factories that made civilian goods quietly switched to military production. Universities that studied space exploration began studying war. Ambassador Park Yuna was recalled to Earth. She brought Somi home and never returned to space. The human diplomatic offices across the galaxy closed one by one. No explanations were given. No replacements were named. Humanity simply withdrew from galactic politics like a tide pulling back from the shore. The Galactic Council noticed the silence but did not understand it. The Volanthi representative, a gentle being who believed in peace above all things, told the other council members not to worry. Humans are emotional creatures, he explained. They are hurt and upset. They need time to process their feelings. In a few months, they will calm down and return to normal. They will forget this unpleasantness and rejoin the galactic community. Most of the council agreed. Humans were new to space. They were soft and weak compared to older species. What could they possibly do against the mighty Calvorian dominion? The matter was dismissed and forgotten, but Elder Counselor Morvith did not agree. He was ancient beyond measure, one of the oldest beings in the known galaxy. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had seen peaceful species become conquerors and mighty warriors become dust. He knew that the most dangerous enemies were not the loud ones, but the quiet ones. Morvith had studied humans since they first reached the stars. He had read their history with growing unease. These creatures came from a world that tried to kill them every day. Their planet had extreme temperatures, violent weather, dangerous animals, and deadly diseases. Everything on Earth was designed to destroy life, yet humans had survived. More than survived. They had conquered their death world and reached for the stars, and their history was written in blood. Humans had fought endless wars against each other. They had developed weapons of terrible power. They had split atoms and burned cities. They had created machines of death that could end all life on their planet many times over. Yet somehow, they had learned to control their violent nature. They had become peaceful explorers. Morvith understood what the other council members did not. Human peace was a choice, not a weakness. They chose to be gentle because they knew what they were capable of. They chose kindness because they remembered their own capacity for cruelty. Now someone had taken away their reason to be kind. "You do not understand," Morvith whispered in the council chamber. His voice was so soft that few heard him. "They are not mourning. They are not processing emotions. They are preparing. Preparing for what?" The Volanthi representative asked with a gentle smile. Morvith looked at him with eyes that had seen civilizations burn. "For war. Not the kind of war we understand. Not battles between fleets or conflicts over territory. Something older. something primal. He paused and spoke the next words very carefully. "They are preparing to hunt." The council laughed softly. The idea of humans hunting the Calvorians was absurd. The Calvorians had thousands of warships. They had conquered dozens of species. Humans had barely left their own solar system, but Morvith did not laugh. He had seen the old Earth records. He had watched footage of human hunters tracking animals across frozen lands for weeks without rest. He had read about how early humans had hunted creatures 10 times their size to extinction through patience and planning. He had learned about the human concept of revenge, a cold, patient hatred that could last for generations. 6 months passed. Earth remained silent. No diplomatic messages. No trade negotiations. No contact at all. Ships that approached human space were politely turned away. Requests for information were ignored. Then strange things began to happen. A Calvorian patrol ship disappeared near the border of human space. It simply vanished without a trace. No distress signal. No debris. Nothing. Then another ship vanished. And another. Intelligence officers on Calvorian bases began dying. One fell downstairs and broke his neck. Another choked on food. A third was found dead in his sleep with no visible cause. Each death looked like an accident. Each death removed someone who knew something important about Calvorian defenses. Commander Thilla's personal guards began disappearing. Her most trusted soldiers simply vanished during shore leave on distant stations. No bodies were ever found. The Calvorians investigated, but found nothing. There was no evidence of human involvement. There was no evidence of anything at all. Just empty spaces where loyal soldiers used to be. On Earth, little Somi was learning to write with her left hand. Her right arm had healed, but it was weak and often painful. The doctor said she might never regain full use of it. She didn't complain. She just practiced her letters over and over, determined to succeed. She asked her mother when she would go back to space. Yuna smiled sadly and said they had important work to do on Earth first. Somi didn't know that her mother had sold everything she owned. She didn't know that the money had paid for 4 new ships being built in secret shipyards. She didn't know that those ships were designed for only one purpose. The hunt had begun, and humanity was very, very patient. Part 3. The hunt begins. Captain Lee Junho stood on the bridge of his ship and stared at the stars. The vessel was called the Black Crane, and it was unlike any ship humanity had built before. It was designed to be invisible. It was designed to be invisible. Special coating absorbed scanner signals. Advanced engines produced almost no heat signature. The ship could drift through space like a ghost. Unseen and unheard. Ju Nho was 43 years old with gray appearing in his black hair. He had been a merchant captain before the incident. He had spent his life trading goods between human colonies, avoiding trouble and dreaming of retirement. Then he had watched the video of Somi being struck down. He had watched Thilla laugh. And something inside him had changed forever. He volunteered the next day. His experience navigating difficult space routes made him valuable. His calm nature under pressure made him perfect for command. Within 3 months, he was captain of the most advanced stealth ship in human history. His crew was made of volunteers, every single one. There were engineers who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. There were soldiers who could kill silently with their bare hands. There were pilots who could fly through asteroid fields blindfolded. Each one had watched the same video. Each one had felt the same cold anger. Each one had chosen to be here. Lieutenant Choi Minji was the intelligence officer. She was young, only 28, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She had spent 6 months doing nothing but studying the Calvorians. She knew their patrol routes, their communication codes, their military structure. She knew the names of Thyla's guards and the layout of her personal fortress. "She's moved again," Minji reported, pulling up a display of star maps. Blue dots showed human space. Red dots showed Calverian territory. A single golden marker showed Thyla's location. "They've transferred her to Calver Prime, the fortress world." Junho studied the map with calm eyes. "Why there?" "Protection. They're starting to notice the disappearances. Someone important finally realized that their people keep vanishing near human space." Minji allowed herself a small smile. "They think she's safe on their home world. 3 defense fleets, orbital weapons platforms, ground forces in the millions." The other officers on the bridge exchanged glances. The numbers were overwhelming. Calver Prime was the most heavily defended world in their empire. Breaking through those defenses would require a massive fleet. Humans had only a handful of ships, but Junho just nodded slowly. "Good? Good?" someone asked. "I want her to feel safe," Junho explained. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "I want her to sleep soundly in her fortress, surrounded by her armies. I want her to believe that no one can touch her." He turned to face his crew. "Because when we take her, I want her to understand that none of it mattered. I want her to know that there is no place in the galaxy where she can hide from us." The bridge was silent. These were not words of hot anger or revenge fantasy. These were the cold words of a hunter who had already decided his prey's fate. Thyla just didn't know it yet. Over the next 2 months, the Black Crane moved like a shadow through Calvorian space. They never attacked directly. They watched and waited and learned. They mapped sensor networks and patrol schedules. They identified weak points in the defense grid. They found the small gaps that no one thought enemies could use. Other ships joined them. The Shadow Fox, the Silent Wolf, the Ghost Tiger, 4 vessels that didn't officially exist, crewed by people who had volunteered to never go home again. They spread out through Calverian space like invisible spiders, spinning a web that no one could see. Back on Calver Prime, Commander Thyla grew comfortable. The Calvorian High Command had assured her that she was protected. The disappearances near human space had stopped after she was moved. Clearly, the soft humans had given up. They had made some pathetic attempt at revenge and failed. Thyla began to laugh about it at parties. She would tell the story of hitting the human child to entertain her guests. She would describe the sound the small body made when it hit the pillar. She would imitate the mother's screams. Her fellow Calvorians would click their mandibles in amusement. "Humans," she would say with contempt. "They are nothing but soft meat. Emotional and weak. They are not even worth considering as enemies." She did not know that her words were being recorded. She did not know that a tiny device, smaller than a grain of sand, had been placed in her drinking cup by a servant she had beaten years ago. She did not know that everything she said was being transmitted to a ship hiding in the outer asteroids of her system. Lieutenant Minji played the recordings for Captain Junho. They listened to Thyla describe hurting Somi, listened to her laugh, listened to her mock human weakness. Junho's face showed no emotion. When the recording ended, he simply said, "Begin the next phase." On stations throughout Calverian space, slaves began to whisper to each other. The Calverians had conquered many species and forced them into servitude. These slaves cleaned floors, served food, maintained equipment. They were invisible to their masters, treated as less than furniture, but humans saw them. Human agents found the ones who hated their masters most. They asked simple questions. They made simple promises. They offered something that no one else had ever offered: hope. "We are coming," the human agents would say. "When the lights go out, stay low and stay quiet. Help will arrive." Not all slaves believed them, but enough did. Enough passed messages and left doors unlocked and looked the other way at crucial moments. On Earth, Admiral Kang Do-hyun reviewed the final plans. The attack would happen during the Calverian Ascension Festival, their most important holiday. Phila would give a speech to her troops. The entire planet would be celebrating. Security would be high but distracted. It's still a suicide mission, one of his advisors warned. Even with everything we've prepared, the odds of success are tiny. Do-hyun thought about his granddaughter's question from months ago. What are we going to do about it? He thought about Somi learning to write with her left hand because a monster had shattered her right arm. He thought about the galaxy watching and doing nothing. The crews know the risks, he said quietly. They volunteered anyway. Some things are worth dying for. And if we fail? Do-hyun's eyes grew hard. Then we send more ships. And more after that. And more after that. We will never stop. We will never forget. We will never forgive. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. The Calvorians think this is about revenge. They're wrong. This is about sending a message to every species in the galaxy. Touch our children, and we will come for you. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. We will always come. In the darkness of space, 4 ships began their final approach to Calver Prime. Their crews were calm and ready. They had trained for this moment for 6 months. They knew most of them would probably die. None of them hesitated. None of them looked back. The hunt was almost over. And Phila had no idea that death was already inside her walls. Part 4. The Fall of Calver Prime. The Ascension Festival was the most sacred day in Calvorian culture. It celebrated the ancient moment when their species first conquered another world. Every Calvorian remembered this day with pride. They held feasts and parades and ceremonies across their empire. On Calver Prime, the celebration was the grandest of all. Commander Phila stood on her balcony high above the capital city. Below her, millions of Calvorian soldiers stood in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed under the light of 3 moons. Massive war machines rolled through the streets. Ships filled the sky in carefully arranged patterns. It was a display of power meant to remind the galaxy that the Calvorians were supreme. Dilla raised her armored arms, and the crowd cheered. The sound was like thunder rolling across mountains. She was about to give the traditional speech about Calvorian glory when the lights went out. Not just her balcony. Not just the capital city. The entire continent went dark. For a moment, there was confused silence. Then panic began to spread. Calvorian eyes were sensitive to light, and the sudden darkness blinded them. Soldiers bumped into each other. Officers shouted orders that no one could follow. The beautiful formations became chaos. In the orbital defense stations, crews scrambled to restore power. But their systems had been infected months ago by programs hidden in routine software updates. The programs waited until this exact moment to activate. Defense grids went offline. Communication networks crashed. Sensor arrays showed nothing but static. The Calvorian fleet tried to respond, but their ships couldn't coordinate. Each captain made different decisions. Some moved to protect the planet. Others spread out to search for enemies. A few collided with each other in the confusion. Through this chaos, 4 small ships slipped past the defense perimeter. They were so dark and so quiet that even working sensors might have missed them. They dropped toward the planet's surface like falling leaves, invisible against the night sky. Sergeant Han Eunji led the ground team. She was 35 years old, a former trauma surgeon who had spent her career saving lives. She had gentle hands that could perform delicate operations. Those same hands now held weapons, designed to kill quickly and silently. She had volunteered the day after seeing Sami's medical report. The detailed description of the little girl's injuries had made her physically sick. She had read about the shattered bones, the the torn muscles, the nerve damage that might never fully heal. She had thought about her own daughter at home and felt something break inside her heart. Now she moved through the darkness of Thilla's fortress like a ghost. 24 operators followed her in perfect silence. They wore suits that made them nearly invisible. They carried weapons that made no sound. They had trained for this specific building, this specific night. For months, Calverian guards fell without knowing what hit them. One moment they stood watch, the next they were on the ground. The humans stepped over their bodies and kept moving. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Each step brought them closer to their target. The fortress was supposed to be impenetrable. It had thick walls, heavy doors, and thousands of guards. But the slaves had done their work well. Locked doors were mysteriously unlocked. Security cameras pointed the wrong way. Guards had been given incorrect patrol routes. One old slave, a species called the Velth, who had served Calvorians for 60 years, met the humans in a dark hallway. He looked at them with large, sad eyes and pointed down a corridor. "That way," he whispered. "Our private chambers are on the top floor. The stairs on the left are not guarded tonight." Yunji nodded. "Thank you." When this is over, the old slave shook his head. "I do not care what happens to me. I only care that she suffers." His voice cracked with decades of pain. "Make her pay for what she has done. Not just to your child. To all the children she has hurt." The humans moved on. Behind them, the old slave smiled for the first time in 40 years. Dilla was in her private chambers when the humans found her. She had retreated there when the lights went out, surrounded by her personal guards. But her guards were gone now, sleeping forever in the hallways below. She was alone in the darkness, fumbling for a weapon. A single light flickered on. Yunji stood in the doorway, her face calm and her eyes cold. "Do you remember the child?" Yunji asked softly. Her voice was almost gentle, like a doctor delivering bad news. "Park Somi, 7 years old. She had blonde hair and a smile that could light up a room. You broke her arm and called her vermin." Thilla's mandibles clicked in anger and fear. She finally found her weapon and raised it. "You cannot do this. Do you know who I am? The Calverian Dominion will destroy your pathetic species. The Council made their choice," interrupted a voice from every speaker in the fortress, in the city, on the entire planet. It was Admiral Kang Do-yun, his words broadcast to millions. They chose to let a monster go unpunished. Now we make our choice. On the screens that still worked, images appeared. The crippled Calvorian defense fleet, disabled but not destroyed. Human ships moving freely through their most protected space. The fortress surrounded by soldiers who had appeared from nowhere. "Your fleet is broken," the Admiral continued. "Your defenses are down. Your commander is about to die. Not because we hate you, not because we want war, but because you hurt a child and laughed about it. And we do not forgive those who hurt our children." Thilla fired her weapon at Yunji. The shot went wide, hitting the wall. Her hands were shaking too much to aim. She, who had killed hundreds in battle, could not keep her weapon steady against a single human. Yunji did not fire back. She walked forward slowly, deliberately, like death itself approaching. Thilla backed away until she hit the wall. She had nowhere left to run. "Please," Thilla whispered. It was a word she had never spoken before. "Please, I'll give you anything. Territory, technology, slaves, whatever you want." Yunji stopped in front of her. "We want justice," she said simply, "and we are going to take it." The other humans entered the room. They moved with careful precision, securing every corner. Captain Junho came last, carrying a metal case. His face showed no triumph, no satisfaction, only cold determination. "Make it quick," he ordered. "We have a message to deliver." Outside the fortress, the Calvorian military was finally regaining some control. Backup power systems came online. Communication networks slowly restored. But by the time they organized a response, it was too late. The human ships lifted off from the planet's surface. They rose through the atmosphere like birds taking flight, leaving behind a devastated defense network and a population in shock. Behind them, in a fortress that had never been breached in 1,000 years, Commander Thilla's body lay on the floor. Her head was no longer attached. The message had been sent. Now it was time to deliver it in person. Part 5. The message. The Galactic Council Chamber was the heart of interstellar civilization. It was a massive circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 1,000 species gathered here to make decisions that affected trillions of lives. The ceiling was made of transparent material that showed the stars above, reminding everyone of the vastness they governed. Today, the chamber was in chaos. Reports were flooding in from Calver Prime. The mighty fortress world had been attacked. Their defense fleet was crippled. Commander Thilla was dead. And somehow, impossibly, the attackers had been human. This is an act of war. The Calvorian ambassador screamed. His mandibles clicked with fury as he paced before the council. The humans have murdered a decorated military commander. They have destroyed our defense network. They must be punished. How did they even accomplish this? Another representative asked. Humans barely have a space fleet. Their technology is primitive compared to the Calvorians. It does not matter how they did it. What matters is that they will pay. The Calvorian Dominion demands that the Council authorize military action against Earth immediately. The chamber buzzed with anxious conversation. Many species feared the Calvorians and wanted to support them. Others were secretly pleased that someone had finally stood up to the bullies. But no one wanted to be caught in the middle of a war. Elder Counselor Morvith sat in his seat and said nothing. He had warned them. He had told them that humans were not like other species. He had explained that their silence was preparation, not surrender. No one had listened. Now they would all see the truth. The massive doors in the chamber burst open. Captain Lee Junho walked through them with calm confidence. He wore his military uniform, crisp and clean, despite everything he had been through. Behind him marched 2 rows of human soldiers in full armor, their weapons held ready but not raised. Council guards moved to stop them. Junho did not slow down. He walked forward as if the guards did not exist. The guards hesitated, looked at each other, and stepped aside. Something in the humans' eyes told them that trying to stop these people would be a fatal mistake. Junho walked to the center of the chamber and stood on the speaking platform. His soldiers formed a perfect line behind him. The entire council stared at him in stunned silence. 6 months ago, Junho began, his voice calm and clear. A child was attacked in this very station. A 7-year-old girl named Park Somi. She was struck down by Commander Thilla of the Calvorian Dominion. Her arm was shattered. Her face was bloodied. She did nothing wrong except exist near someone who thought her life was worthless. He paused and looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species after species. A mother came to this council and begged for justice. She showed you the evidence. She showed you the footage. She asked only that the one who hurt her daughter face some consequence for her actions. His voice grew colder. You called it a cultural misunderstanding. You dismissed our pain as if it meant nothing. You let the monster who hurt our child walk free and laugh about what she had done. Junho reached down and opened the metal case he had carried into the chamber. Gasps echoed through the room as he lifted Commander Thilla's severed head and placed it carefully on the sacred speaking pedestal. The dead eye stared at the council, empty and accusing. This is our cultural response. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the Calverian ambassador stood frozen, his mandibles hanging open in shock. Elder Morvith rose slowly from his seat. His ancient voice carried through the chamber. You have made enemies of the entire Calvorian dominion. They will demand war. Their fleet is vast. Your species is small. How do you expect to survive? Junho turned to face the elder. Let them come. A massive screen above the chamber flickered to life. Admiral Kang Do-yoon appeared, standing on the bridge of a warship. But not just any warship. This was something new, something that had not existed 6 months ago. Its name was displayed in human script, Sami's Promise. Behind the Admiral, visible through the bridge windows, ships emerged from hyperspace. Not 4 ships. Not 40 ships. Hundreds of ships. Warships of every size, armed with weapons that gleamed with deadly promise. We are from Earth, the Admiral said. A world where the weather tries to kill us. A world where animals develop venom and claws and teeth to tear us apart. A world where even tiny creatures can end our lives with a single bite. His old eyes were hard as stone. We evolved fighting our own planet. Every human alive is descended from survivors who refused to die. He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. We came to the stars hoping for friendship. We offered peace. We traded fairly. We asked only to be treated with basic dignity. And when one of our children was harmed, we asked only for justice. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. You gave us neither. So hear this message, not just from humanity, but from every species who has ever been hurt by those stronger than them. The Admiral stepped aside, revealing a young woman standing behind him. It was Park Sami's mother, Ambassador Park Yuna. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. Our children are not to be touched, she said. Our civilians are not to be harmed. Our people are not to be treated as less than any other species in this galaxy. She paused. This is not a request. This is not open for debate. This is not negotiable. Junho spoke again, addressing the assembled council. The Calvorian fleet has been disabled, not destroyed. We left witnesses deliberately. We want the galaxy to see what happens when humans are pushed too far. He looked directly at the Calvorian ambassador. The next time someone harms a human child, we will not stop at one head. We will not stop at one fleet. We will not stop at all. He turned and began walking toward the door. His soldiers followed in perfect formation. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. You called us soft. You called us weak. You laughed at our pain and dismissed our anger. His voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the chamber. Remember this day. Remember what softness and weakness look like when you push them too far. The humans departed. The doors closed behind them. The council sat in terrible silence, Thilla's dead eyes still staring at them from the sacred pedestal. The Calverian ambassador tried to speak, to demand retribution, to threaten war. But his voice faltered. He looked at the fleet on the screen, still hovering in formation around the council station. He thought about his own species' home world, now vulnerable and exposed. He said nothing and sat down. In the months that followed, many things changed. The Calvorian Dominion did not declare war. They could not afford to. Their military had been embarrassed, their commander executed, their reputation shattered. Other species they had conquered began to rebel. Inspired by what the humans had done, the Galactic Council quietly revised their policies. Attacks on civilians of any species would now be investigated seriously. Cultural differences were no longer an acceptable excuse for violence. Justice, real justice, became a priority. Across the galaxy, in slave pens and occupied worlds, oppressed species began to whisper a new word. They spoke it in secret, in the dark, where their masters could not hear. It was a word of hope. Deathworlders thought the humans had proven something important. They had shown that being peaceful did not mean being weak. They had demonstrated that kindness was a choice, not a limitation. They had made clear that soft hands could become hard fists when necessary. On Earth, little Park Somi finally returned to school. Her right arm was still weak, and she had to be careful with it. But she could write again. She could draw pictures of spaceships and aliens and stars. She could smile again. She never knew exactly what had happened on her behalf. Her mother told her only that bad people had been punished and that she would always be safe. That was enough for Somi. She was 7 years old and had her whole life ahead of her. And somewhere in the stars, on a ship called Somi's Promise, Admiral Kan Do-yoon looked at a small photograph. It showed his granddaughter and Somi playing together at a park, laughing in the sunshine. He had answered his granddaughter's question. What are we going to do about it? They had done what humans always did. They had protected their young. They had stood up for what was right. They had shown the universe that some things were worth fighting for, and they had sent a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Touch our children, and we will come for you. Always.